Let's move over to this story, the major one for the day. Former President Jacob Zuma will not serve the remainder of his sentence due to a remission process that non-violent offenders have benefited from. To talk more about this, we are joined via Teams by legal analyst Dr Tsietsi Ramatsekisa. Dr Tsietsi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. Let's start off here. What is the remissions program? Because this is not the first time that offenders have been released on this remission program. I understand the last one was in 2019.
Good morning, Adrian and viewers. The remission program, remember that our legal framework, especially when it comes to the issues of correctional service, we've got the Corrections Act. Other than that, we also have the Constitution. In terms of the Constitution, the President has got obligations to perform when it comes to matters that relates to the correctional services. And again, the Correctional Service Act itself, it also empowers and gives powers to the Commissioner, the Minister, and also the President as the members of the executive, particularly the Minister and the President. So it is in this instance wherein the executive has decided to go for a remission program that will reduce the issue of, so many prisoners in our prison facilities that they lack beds or they lack space to accommodate them.
Yeah. And does the remission program then mean that okay, let me put it this way. How different is it to, for instance, to a parole? Because this person has been convicted, but the person is then released on remission. How different is it to a parole where somebody is convicted, but then released on parole and have certain conditions that they still need to meet?
The two are different regimes. Remember, the parole, it is done in terms of also the Correctional Service Act. There is a specific provision that deals with that. And there is also a specific process that needs to be followed. And that also goes to what we call the parole board. But this one is a special regime that has been created by the executive using a different provision in order to reduce the issue of over-concentration in the prison facilities.
Yeah. Do you know what conditions are attached to a remissions program if you are released on remissions?
It depends on how those are, are put together. But there must be, requirements that, are very sound legally in terms of how this process should be handled, just to avoid the issue of, inconsistency. But I can tell you they are not far from the processes that are used in a parole system. It is just that in this instance, this is the system that does not go via parole side, does not go via the parole board, but it goes into the system that they've created. But I can tell you that it will look at, the process will look at the types of offenses. Sometimes it might look at also the conduct of the prisoners that are qualifying or that are looked to be qualifying for the regime. And again, it must also look in terms of the issue of the interviews, because remember, you can't just release a prisoner without proper consultation in terms of the victim offender dialogue. I think this process and the requirements, they also include all those things.
Okay. Then let's look at how the Correctional Services Commissioner looked at the SCA judgment that was handed down, of course, which remains in place after the Constitutional Court found that there are no prospects of success. What do you make of the process that was followed here by the Correctional Services Commissioner?
I would say that, they might have tried to scrutinize, look deeply into this judgment so that they might not be found wanting. The only problem sometimes, we might look at the issue of timing and the reasons that they are trying to put together to justify their decision. Remember, this remission program, it has been there I can say dates back from April, if I'm not mistaken. But in the manner in which maybe now it has been administered when it comes to the case we're talking about, it's something that it might raise eyebrows to members of the public to say, are we having a justice system or correctional service system that does not treat people equally? Because if you look at it, they have tried to comply and close all the loopholes by readmitting the former president into their facility and again taking a fresh decision, but very quickly, in terms of releasing him using this program. Now using a different program. Remember, initially, when he was released, it was on medical parole. But now they've changed. They are now using a different system in order to justify their decision or make it a point that they close all the gaps and also try to adhere to the decision of the Supreme Court of Appeal.
Do you think that there are any legal grounds for a judicial review of this decision?
So far, from where I'm seated, I can't pinpoint to say that there might be one or two, but I need to study the judgment, thoroughly and also compare to get more information in terms of how did they arrive to this decision. Because if we start pointing at an issue of judicial review without having concrete evidence and facts of how they arrived into this decision of remission, even though we know that the system and or the system of remission has been there, but we need to look at the steps which they followed. We need to look at the steps which they followed in terms of the readmission, in terms of also the in terms of releasing the former president, as to whether did they follow the requirements to the latter. If we compare the two, that is when we can maybe try to pinpoint to say maybe they've lacked here and there. But so far, it will be based on speculation if we start doing that.
Thank you so much for your time. Legal analyst there, Dr Tsietsi Ramatsekisa.